I never thought the man I trusted with my life would stand at the door and tell me to leave while another woman smiled from inside my house. She was wearing my clothes as if she had already erased me. And while my children held my hands tightly, confused and scared, he said the house was no longer mine. I had to go wherever I wanted because he had made his decision. In that moment, my heart did not just break. It burned with a silent promise that this would not be the end of my story. So I left without begging, without crying in front of him, hiding my pain until I made a call that would change everything. Because what he did not know was that the house he threw me out of with such pride held a truth he had never questioned. A truth connected to my father. And when we returned the next day, the fear in his eyes told me the game had just taken a turn. This time justice would be mine. I still remember the exact moment my world began to crumble. Nothing seemed wrong until I opened the door of my house and heard a laugh that was not mine. When I entered, I saw her sitting comfortably as if everything belonged to her. My husband stood beside her with no trace of guilt in his eyes. Before I could even understand what was happening, he looked at me as if I were a stranger. "This house is no longer yours. You should take the children and leave." My heart froze because I realized this was not just betrayal. It was something planned, something hidden from me for a long time. While I stood there trying to hug my children and stay strong, I felt a strange silence inside me. Like a storm about to explode. Because deep down I knew this was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a truth he would soon regret. I did not argue with him because something inside me already understood this moment was not sudden. It had been carefully planned behind my back. So I took our suitcases in silence while my children kept asking questions I could not answer. We left the house that once felt safe but now felt like a lie. When the door closed behind us, I heard her soft laugh echo through the walls. It tightened my chest with pain I refused to show. We sat on the cold pavement for a while because I needed a few seconds to think clearly. I could not fall apart in front of my children. It was then that small details began to connect in my mind like pieces of a hidden truth. I remembered how my husband had distanced himself lately, how he avoided conversations about money. How certain documents were always kept away from me. Suddenly everything felt planned, as if he had been waiting for the right moment to erase me completely. What hurt even more was realizing that someone I trusted had slowly become a stranger living under the same roof. While my children leaned on me, I promised myself I would not let this moment define our future. Because I was not as weak as he believed. Then I reached into my bag and took out my phone with trembling hands. I looked at the screen for a few seconds because the person I was about to call was someone I had kept distance from for years. Not because he was wrong, but because I wanted to prove I could build my own life. But now I understood that silence had only given others the courage to betray me. So I pressed the call button and waited as each second grew heavier than the last. When my father, Don Javier Castillo, answered, I could no longer hold back the truth. My voice broke as I told him everything, between sobs, trying to stay strong while my children listened silently beside me. There was a long pause on the other end that made my heart race because I did not know how he would react. But then his voice became calm and firm, not angry but controlled in a way that made me realize he already understood more than I said. He asked no questions, he did not blame me. He simply said he was coming and that I should not move from where I was. The way he said it made something inside me calm for the first time since it all happened. After ending the call, I looked back at the house. I noticed something I had ignored before. The plaque near the door still showed a name my husband had never questioned. A name connected to my past. In that moment, a silent understanding began to form in my mind, like a truth waiting to be revealed. Because the confidence with which my husband had thrown me out suddenly felt out of place. As if he believed he had control over something that never truly belonged to him. As the night grew darker and my children slowly fell asleep beside me, I stayed awake. I thought not about what I had lost, but about what was coming. Because for the first time I felt this story was not ending in pain but heading towards something deeper. Something that would expose every lie he had built. In that silence I realized the next time I stood in front of that door I would not be someone being thrown out. I would be someone who had finally discovered the truth he tried so hard to hide. The night felt longer than any I had lived, but I did not close my eyes. Something inside me refused to rest until I saw what came next. Just when the silence became unbearable, I noticed headlights approaching slowly from the distance. The soft sound of a car stopping nearby broke the quiet and my heart began to beat faster. I stood up, hugging my children, because deep down I knew it was him. When the door opened and my father, Don Javier Castillo, stepped out, I felt a strange mix of relief and strength I had not felt in years. He did not rush or panic. He simply walked toward me with calm steps. His mere presence changed the atmosphere around us. When he looked at me, his eyes softened for a brief second before turning sharp as if he had already decided what needed to be done. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder and told me everything would be fine. For the first time since I was thrown out, I believed those words. Then he looked at my children and spoke to them in a reassuring tone that made him feel safe. Without wasting time, he asked me to get in the car. But before moving, I turned my head once more toward the house. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains as if they were watching us. As if they were sure nothing would change. That quiet confidence of theirs made something inside me grow stronger. Because now I knew they had no idea what was about to happen. While we sat inside the car, my father remained silent for a few moments. Not because he was unsure, but because he was thinking. Then finally he spoke with a calm but firm voice. He asked if I had ever checked the property papers of the house after our marriage. His question caught me by surprise because I realized I had trusted my husband enough to never question it. When I shook my head, my father nodded slightly as if confirming something he already suspected. Then he told me that some decisions people make out of greed often blind them to the facts they should fear most. His words created a silent tension inside me because they felt like a warning about something much bigger than I understood. As the car began to pull away from the house, I felt I was leaving behind not just a place but a version of myself that had tolerated silence for too long. During the journey, my father made some phone calls, speaking in short, clear phrases I could not fully understand. But every word carried authority. With each passing minute, I realized this situation would not end in a simple confrontation. It would be something much more serious, something that would fully expose the truth. When we finally stopped at a place where we could rest for a while, my father turned to me. He said that the next morning we would return, not to ask questions but to reveal answers. The way he said it made my chest tighten with anticipation. Because I could feel he was holding information until the right moment. While sitting there trying to process everything, I remembered the plaque with the name. The same name that had always been there but never spoken about. Suddenly it felt like the key to a hidden truth. My father looked at me as if he knew what I was thinking and said softly that some people live in a house without ever knowing who the true owner of the ground they walk on is. Those words stayed in my mind as the night slowly passed. Because for the first time I understood that my husband's confidence was not built on truth but on assumptions. And assumptions have a way of crumbling when faced with reality. While I hugged my children and prepared for what was coming, I realized the fear I had felt earlier had disappeared. It was replaced by a quiet determination. Because whatever was about to happen the next day would not only change my life. It would force every hidden lie into the light where it could no longer survive. Morning arrived with a strange calm that did not match the storm I had lived through the night before. But this time I was not the same person who had been thrown out of that house. While standing beside my father, I felt a silent strength growing within me. He did not say much. He simply nodded once and we got in the car. As we drove back, I noticed how stable everything felt, as if every moment led to something already decided. When we finally stopped in front of the house, my heart did not race with fear but with anticipation. I stepped out slowly, hugging my children, while my father walked ahead of me with a confidence that changed the entire atmosphere. Before we could even knock, the door opened as if they had been watching our return. My husband Sebastian stood there with the same arrogance on his face. But it vanished the moment his eyes moved from me and landed on my father, Don Javier Castillo. I saw confusion replace his confidence in a single second. The woman behind him stepped back slightly, sensing the sudden change. Without raising his voice, my father spoke in a calm tone that held more power than anger ever could. He asked a simple question about the house and its ownership. My husband tried to brush it off at first, but his voice lacked the confidence he had shown the night before. As the conversation continued, I noticed small details I had never paid attention to. The hesitation in his answers, the way his eyes moved, the silence that followed each question. Then my father took a step forward and mentioned the name written on the property documents. The same name on the door. In that moment, everything froze because the realization hit them both at the same time. The house they thought was theirs had never been under their control. The truth they had ignored was now right in front of them. My husband's face turned pale as he struggled to respond, but the words would not come. The woman who once sat so secure inside now looked completely uncertain, as if the ground beneath her feet was no longer stable. I remained there watching it all unfold, not with anger but with quiet clarity. Because the pain they caused me had already transformed into something stronger. Then my father revealed that the property had always been under his authority long before my marriage. Any assumption made without verification held no value in reality. The weight of those words crushed the false control my husband thought he had. For the first time I saw him not as someone powerful but as someone who had based his actions on ignorance. As the silence grew heavier, my father made it clear that no one had the right to throw me or my children out of a place that legally and legitimately protected us. The shift in power was so sudden that even the air around us felt different. My husband tried to speak again, but this time there was no confidence in his voice, only uncertainty and fear. I realized that the moment he forced us out, he had unknowingly walked toward his own downfall. As I stepped forward beside my father, I felt a quiet sense of justice settling in. Because the truth was no longer hidden. It stood openly where no lie could survive. In that moment I understood what was happening was not just a confrontation. It was the beginning of consequences he had never prepared for. I looked at him not with anger but with a quiet strength he had never seen before. Because everything he tried to take from me was never really his. While the silence filled the room, my father made the final decision that ended everything without any chaos. He told him to leave immediately because the house was not theirs to stay in. This time there were no arguments, no arrogance, only silent defeat as they gathered their things under the weight of their own actions. I stood there holding my children, realizing that the pain I once felt had turned into clarity. Because betrayal can break you for a moment, but truth has a way of restoring what is right. When the door closed behind them, I walked back into my house. Not as someone who was thrown out, but as someone who had faced betrayal, discovered the truth, and reclaimed her place with dignity. Knowing that justice does not need noise to be powerful. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.